The glass doors to the studio building stood tall and bright, shining in the morning sun. Zamani Rayne pushed them open slowly, holding her portfolio close to her chest. Her hands felt cold even though the air was warm. She had been waiting for this day for months. It was the final casting for one of the biggest fashion campaigns of the year. Her name was on the list. She had been invited. Still, her heart beat fast like a drum. She walked across the clean floor, her heels clicking with each step. The hall smelled like perfume and coffee. People passed her in a hurry, not stopping, not smiling. When she reached the check-in desk, a young woman with red lipstick barely looked up. "Name?" the woman asked. "Zamani Rayne," she said, steady but soft. The woman scanned her list, found the name, and nodded. "Fourth floor, Studio B." Zamani thanked her and walked to the elevator. She pressed the button and waited. Her fingers still felt cold. Inside the elevator, she looked at her reflection in the shiny walls. Her dark brown skin glowed against her soft cream coat. Her hair was pulled back into a smooth bun. She had picked her best outfit. Simple, strong, and elegant. Today, she told herself they would see her, not just for what she looked like, but for who she was. When the elevator opened on the fourth floor, soft music played from inside the casting room. The waiting area was full. Models sat in chairs along the wall, some looking at their phones, some whispering, some fixing their makeup. All of them looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. Most had light skin, straight hair, or the kind of look that fashion magazines often called classic or marketable. Zamani walked in and sat down near the end of the row. She placed her portfolio on her lap and folded her hands. A few heads turned toward her. A tall girl in red heels gave her a quick glance, then leaned over to the girl beside her and whispered something. They both giggled. Zamani heard it but didn't look their way. She had seen that before. That small laugh that said, "You don't belong here." No one spoke to her. The room felt quiet around her even though people were talking. It was a silence that didn't come from sound. It came from the way people looked past her. The kind of silence that said, "You're invisible." A door opened, and a woman stepped out. She wore all black and had sharp eyes that looked like they had seen too much. Her name was Celestine Monroe. Everyone in the room sat up straighter. Some smiled nervously. Celestine was the lead casting agent for the campaign. She walked to the front and called the next name on her list. One by one, the models were called in. Some came back out smiling, some frowning. Some didn't come back out at all. Time passed slowly. Zamani watched the clock. Her name still wasn't called. She looked around and noticed that some of the girls who arrived after her had already been seen. She leaned over to ask the woman next to her if the order had changed. But the woman didn't answer. She just looked at Zamani's skin, blinked, and turned away. Zamani sat back. She tried to breathe deeply. She remembered the words her grandmother used to tell her. "Still water runs deep. Don't let them stir you." She had always liked those words. They helped her stay calm when she felt small. Finally, the last few names were called. Zamani's wasn't one of them. She stood up, her knees stiff. She walked quietly to the assistant by the door and spoke gently. "Excuse me, I think my name hasn't been called yet." "Zamani Rayne." The assistant looked at the list and frowned. She turned toward Celestine, who was sipping a small cup of coffee. Celestine raised her eyebrows and walked over. She looked Zamani up and down. Not kindly, not with curiosity, just a glance, like she was looking at something that didn't match the room. "What's the name?" Celestine asked. "Zamani Rayne." Celestine looked at the list again, even though the name was clearly there. "Ah, right," she said slowly. "Well, we've got the type we need already. You can go." "Thank you for coming." Zamani stood still. She didn't understand. "But I was invited. I have my card. I didn't even get to walk." Celestine's smile was tight. "We're looking for a different aesthetic," she said, as if that explained everything. Zamani blinked. She felt something in her chest, like a balloon losing air. But she nodded. She didn't want to make a scene. Not yet. She turned to leave. As she walked toward the door, She heard someone behind her whisper under their breath, "This isn't Essence magazine." Another small laugh followed. She didn't look back. Zamani walked out into the hallway, her steps slow. Her hands still held her portfolio. Her mouth was closed, but her heart was open and hurting. She got into the elevator alone. As the doors closed, she felt tears press behind her eyes. She blinked them away. Outside, she sat in her car for a long time. She didn't start the engine. She just sat. The sun had moved in the sky. A few people walked past, but she didn't notice them. She thought of her grandmother again. The way she used to rub Zamani's arms and say, "Your skin is made of sun and soil. You carry fire. Don't ever let them put it out." Zamani looked at her reflection in the car window. Her skin still glowed. Her eyes still held fire. She was quiet, but she was not done. The engine of the car stayed off. Zamani Rayne sat still, her hands resting on the steering wheel. Her fingers had stopped shaking, but her chest still felt heavy. She stared out the windshield, watching people come and go from the building. Some walked quickly with excitement in their steps. Others came out like they had just been told a secret they could never share. But none of them looked like her. She sat there for almost an hour. The street outside grew busier. Cars passed. Horns beeped. Music played from a shop nearby. But none of it touched her. Her mind stayed inside the waiting room, inside the looks, the whispers, the silence. She had walked into that casting with hope and walked out with something else. She was still trying to name that feeling. It was not just sadness, not just anger. It was something deeper, something with old roots. Zamani looked at her phone. She opened the camera and stared at herself. Her cheekbones were high and proud. Her lips were full. Her eyes told stories. Her skin was rich like dark earth under sunlight. People had called it too much, too strong, too deep, but she had learned to love it, not just wear it, love it. Still, something inside her asked a question she didn't want to hear. What if they're right? She shook her head slowly and closed her eyes. That was not her voice. That was their voice trying to live in her body. She would not let it stay. A memory came to her, soft and sharp. She was 10 years old, sitting in the school hallway after a play audition. The teacher had told her she could not play the lead princess because her skin was too dark for the costume. That day, she had gone home in silence. Her grandmother had been waiting on the porch, rocking gently in her chair. When Zamani told her what happened, the old woman had nodded slowly and said, "Sometimes people cannot see your crown because they are staring at their own empty heads." Zamani smiled just a little at the memory. She started the car, but she did not drive away. Instead, she turned it back off. She picked up her portfolio from the seat beside her and opened it. Inside were photos from past shoots. There was the outdoor campaign where she stood on a hill under clouds, wearing a long blue dress that blew in the wind. There was the beauty ad where her face filled the frame, her skin glowing without a single light on it. And there was the editorial where she wore red from head to toe, with her hair braided like a crown. Each photo was a piece of her journey, a moment where someone had seen her and said yes. So why had today been a no? Zamani closed the folder and took a deep breath. Her heart had something to say, and she could not leave until she listened to it. She got out of the car. The sun hit her face like a friend. She walked back toward the building. This time her steps were not slow. She knew what she wanted to say. She didn't know what would happen, but she knew she had to say it. Not for them, for her. Inside, the lobby was quieter than before. The receptionist looked up in surprise. "I just need a moment," Zamani said calmly. The woman nodded, unsure of what to do, but she did not stop her. Zamani took the elevator back to the 4th floor. When the doors opened, the waiting area was nearly empty. Just a few models remained, chatting quietly. The assistant at the door looked confused to see her again. Before she could speak, Celestine stepped out of the casting room. Zamani walked straight to her. Celestine raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" Zamani stood tall. She was not angry. She was not loud. But her voice filled the space like music. "You told me you were looking for a different aesthetic," she said. But what you meant was that you already had enough girls who looked like me. Or maybe none. Or maybe you never meant to see me at all. But I came here to be seen. And I will not leave until I leave you with one thing." Celestine said nothing. The models nearby grew quiet. Even the assistant stopped typing. Zamani took one more step forward. "If my skin makes you uncomfortable," she said, her voice strong and calm, "maybe it is not me who does not fit. Maybe it is your lens that needs changing." Silence. The kind that came not from ignoring, but from hearing something too true to ignore. Zamani did not blink. She did not move. She let the words hang in the air like light. One of the models reached into her bag and took out her phone. Without a word, she pressed record. Celestine looked at Zamani for a long moment. Her face gave away nothing. No smile. No frown. Just stillness. Zamani nodded once, then turned around. She did not storm out. She walked like someone who had just delivered a message that the world needed to carry. Like someone who had remembered who she was. Outside the casting room, the hallway seemed brighter. She walked back to the elevator, still holding her portfolio. Her shoulders were light. Her chest no longer felt heavy. When she reached the ground floor and stepped outside, the air felt fresh. Not just because it was air, because it was hers again. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know who would see the video. She did not care about becoming famous or going viral. What mattered was that she had spoken. And that was enough for now. The sun was dipping lower when Zamani Rayne walked back to her car. The sky was turning orange with long clouds stretching across it like slow brushstrokes. She opened the car door and sat down gently. Her legs were not tired, but something in her soul had finally rested. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes for a moment. The words she had spoken still echoed in her mind. They did not feel like words anymore. They felt like truth, like breath, like something she had waited a lifetime to say. Zamani drove home with the windows rolled down. The city moved around her, busy and loud. But inside her car, there was a stillness. She turned on the radio and let the music play softly in the background. Her mind traveled through memories like pages turning in a book. She remembered all the moments she had been told she was too much. Too dark, too bold, too different. In school, they had skipped her when casting the lead roles. At dance class, she had been placed in the back row even when she knew every move. On magazine covers, she had seen girls with soft curls and honey skin called beautiful while her own face was never mentioned. But in her grandmother's house, she had always been told the opposite. Her grandmother used to hold her face between her hands and say, "You were carved from the richest night. Your shine comes from stars most people do not take time to see." Zamani smiled now as she thought about that. She parked in front of her building and gathered her things. When she entered her apartment, the familiar scent of lavender and cocoa butter wrapped around her like a blanket. She placed her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the edge of her bed. She opened her phone and checked her messages. Nothing unusual. A few missed calls. One text from her cousin asking how the casting went. She hesitated for a moment before replying. "It went exactly how it needed to," she wrote. Then she turned off the phone and placed it on the dresser. She needed quiet now. Not silence, but peace. She took a shower, letting the water rinse away the weight of the day. She changed into soft clothes and sat by the window with a warm drink. Outside, the city lights were beginning to twinkle. A plane flew overhead, blinking slowly across the sky. Somewhere out there, people were laughing, talking, sleeping, dreaming. She wondered if any of them had felt what she felt today. That mix of rejection and release. That fire that comes after a storm. In another part of the city, a young woman named Leora sat on the bus, watching a video on her phone. She had been in the waiting room earlier, one of the few who had said nothing but watched everything. She had seen the way Zamani was treated. She had watched her leave, then return, then speak those words like a flame lit from her chest. Leora had recorded the moment without thinking. Something inside her told her it needed to be shared. Now she sat on the bus, her thumb hovering over the screen. She added a caption, This woman just told the truth the fashion world refuses to hear. Then she posted it. Within minutes, people began to watch. They liked, they commented, they shared. Some were models who had faced the same kind of silence. Some were strangers who had never known this kind of struggle but felt the power of the words anyway. Others were angry, trying to defend the system, but most were moved. By the next morning, the video had been shared over 50,000 times. Zamani did not know this yet. She woke up slow, stretching her arms and yawning. She made breakfast and hummed a song she remembered from her childhood. She checked her phone without urgency. When she opened her messages, her eyes widened. There were dozens of unread texts, missed calls from numbers she did not recognize, notifications from social media apps she had not opened in weeks. Her heart began to race. She clicked on one of the messages from her friend Nia. "Girl, you are everywhere right now. That speech, that sentence, everyone is talking about it." Zamani's fingers moved fast as she opened the video. She watched herself on screen, standing in the casting room, speaking clearly. She had not realized someone had recorded it. She watched her own face, calm but strong. She listened to her voice, steady and real. "If my skin makes you uncomfortable, maybe it is not me who does not fit. Maybe it is your lens that needs changing." She let the words play again and again. She did not feel embarrassed. She did not feel nervous. She felt seen. She opened her inbox. There were invitations to speak on talk shows, requests for interviews, offers from brands claiming they had always supported diversity. She scrolled through them all with careful eyes. She did not reply right away. Later that day, she stepped outside and walked to the corner store. People were looking at her differently now. Some smiled. One woman stopped her and said, "Thank you for saying what needed to be said." Zamani smiled politely and kept walking. Inside her, a gentle wave moved. Not pride, not fame, just purpose. At home that night, she called her grandmother. The old woman answered on the third ring. "Baby," she said, "I saw you. You spoke like you had roots under your feet." Zamani laughed softly. "I felt like you were there with me." "I always am," her grandmother replied. Zamani looked out her window again. This time, the sky was darker. The stars were out. She thought about all the other girls like her. Girls sitting in waiting rooms right now. Girls being skipped over. Girls thinking they were too much or not enough. She hoped they would see the video. But more than that, she hoped they would hear the message behind the message. That their worth did not come from acceptance. Came from truth. From standing tall. From speaking up. And so, with the whole world watching, she stayed the same. She still used cocoa butter at night. She still tied her hair up with a silk scarf. She still prayed softly before bed. And she still believed what her grandmother had told her long ago. That her skin was not a costume. It was a crown. The next morning began with soft light pouring through the windows of Zamani Rayne's apartment. The city was waking up, cars were beginning to move through the streets, and voices floated up from people walking below. But inside, everything was still. Zamani stood in her kitchen wearing her favorite robe, holding a warm mug in her hands. She had not checked her phone yet. She needed a slow moment before stepping into the noise of the day. Her apartment smelled of cinnamon and jasmine. The sun touched her face as she stood by the window. She looked out with calm eyes. It had been only one day since the video went viral, but already it felt like the world had changed around her. Messages had poured in all night. News anchors wanted her thoughts. Magazine editors wanted her image. Activists wanted her voice. But she had stayed quiet. Not because she was unsure. Because she wanted to listen first. Not to the world. To herself. She sat down on her couch and reached for her notebook. It was old and full of scribbles, quotes, thoughts, and dreams. She flipped through the pages slowly, pausing at one she had written months ago. The words were crooked and quick, but they were clear. "I want to be remembered not for what I wore, but for what I stood for." She placed her hand over the page and smiled gently. Then her phone rang. She picked it up. It was Nia, her best friend. "Zamani, Nia said before she could even say hello. It's happening. You're on every timeline I scroll through. I cannot even open my apps without seeing your face. And girl, they are calling that sentence of yours the line of the year. Zamani laughed softly. It still feels unreal. Well, it's very real. I got 2 friends who said your words made them cry. And a cousin who said she's never heard someone say it so clearly. Zamani listened in silence for a moment. Then she spoke. I want it to mean something more than just views and shares. I don't want this to become just another trending moment that people forget next week. It won't, Nia said. Not if you guide it. Zamani nodded slowly. After they hung up, she opened her messages. A video had been sent to her. It was from a girl she had never met. The girl looked no older than 13. Her hair was braided tightly, and her eyes held something heavy. She spoke in a small voice. Hi, Miss Zamani. I just wanted to say thank you. I saw your video. I'm the only black girl in my school, and sometimes I feel like no one sees me. But when I heard you talk, I felt strong. Like maybe I can speak up too. Thank you for showing me I am not wrong for being me. Zamani's eyes welled with tears. She pressed her hand over her chest. That little voice had found her. In a world full of shouting and noise, a single whisper had reached her heart. She stood up slowly and walked to the mirror. There was her face. Not flawless, not perfect, but powerful. She touched her cheek gently. I see you, she whispered. That afternoon, she met with her mentor, Mr. Jacoby, an older man who had spent his life in photography and storytelling. He had guided her when she first entered the industry. She trusted him not because he was wise but because he always told the truth. They met at a quiet cafe with ivy on the windows and tea that smelled like lemon and mint. He sat across from her with his camera bag beside him. I saw the video, he said, folding his hands on the table. I heard the words. I felt them. Zamani sipped her tea. I did not plan it. It just came out. That's when truth works best, he replied. When it doesn't try too hard. He looked at her carefully. What do you want to do now? I want to create something, not just talk. I want to open space for girls who look like me, for women who are still told to wait quietly. I want to do more than just post. Mr. Jacoby smiled. Then do it. Speak in every room. Show your story in every corner. But most of all, make room for others to rise with you. The next few days moved quickly. Zamani began receiving requests from young artists and models asking for advice. She replied to every one of them. She did not let her inbox become a wall. She turned it into a door. She began recording short messages of encouragement. She shared old stories. She talked about being ignored in auditions, about being edited out of photos, about crying in dressing rooms. But she always ended each message with hope. One day she walked into a small studio with Mr. Jacoby and helped produce a photo shoot that featured models of every shade, every shape, and every curl pattern. She made sure no one was placed at the back of the line. Everyone stood in the center. Everyone was seen. She visited schools where girls clapped when she entered the room. They asked her questions. They shared their own stories. Some cried. Some laughed. Some hugged her so tight she had to blink away tears. In one school, a little girl asked her, "Why didn't they see how pretty you were at the casting?" Zamani knelt beside her and answered gently, "Sometimes people look at the world through glasses that are foggy with fear. They miss the beauty that doesn't match their picture. But that doesn't mean the beauty isn't there." The little girl nodded and hugged her. Word spread. Other black women in the industry began sharing their own stories. Some had stayed silent for years. But Zamani's moment had opened something. Not a gate, path. And still, Zamani kept her promise to herself. She did not let the attention change her. She still called her grandmother every evening. She still walked in the park without makeup. She still bought flowers on Sunday mornings. But one thing had changed. She had found her voice. And now that she had used it, she would never go back to silence. One evening, after another long day of speaking and mentoring and dreaming, she sat by her window again. The sky was full of stars. She opened her notebook and wrote one simple sentence. I did not want to be the moment. I wanted to be the movement. Evening had fallen again across the city. The sky was painted in strokes of deep purple and fading orange, and the lights from buildings shimmered like tiny hopes spread across the horizon. In a quiet room lit by soft golden lamps and candles that smelled of vanilla, Zamani Rayne stood near her desk. She had just come back from another school visit, her voice still warm with the echoes of young girls asking brave questions. On the walls behind her were new photographs, not of famous models or runway stars. These pictures showed the faces of the unheard. Brown skin in every shade, tight coils, big eyes filled with dreams, smiles that looked like sunlight breaking through clouds. Each photo held a story. A young dancer who had been told to straighten her hair or step back. A dark-skinned actor who was cast only as background. A girl who had once hated her reflection until she saw Zamani on screen and realized that her own beauty was not an accident. Zamani placed her notebook down and took a deep breath. The window was open, letting in the breeze. It was quiet in the room, but her heart was full of voices. The voices of those who had messaged her. Those who had reached out. Those who had found courage because of a sentence spoken in a room that once tried to erase her. She sat down and opened her laptop. A new message had arrived. It was from a woman named Amaka who lived across the world. Amaka had seen the video 2 weeks ago. She wrote that she had been afraid to audition for a role because she was always told her skin was too dark for cameras. But after watching Zamani speak, she walked into the audition anyway. She did not get the part, but she was proud for the first time in her life. Proud because she stopped waiting to be picked. Proud because she picked herself. Zamani read the message 3 times before placing her hand gently on the keyboard. Her fingers moved slowly as she opened her recording software. She adjusted the camera and sat back in her chair. The candle flickered behind her, casting a warm glow across her face. She looked into the lens with soft strength. Then she began. Hi everyone. If you are watching this, it means you heard what I said in that room a few weeks ago. Or maybe someone sent this to you because you needed to hear something real today. Either way, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And most of all, thank you for feeling it. She paused and took a breath. I did not say those words to become famous. I did not say them for likes or views. I said them because I needed to remind myself that my voice mattered. And maybe, just maybe, someone else needed to hear it too. And you did. You heard it. You carried it. You turned it into something bigger than me. She looked down for a second, gathering her thoughts. I've spent years walking into rooms where I was looked at like a mistake. Too bold. Too dark. Too loud. Too everything. But what I've learned is that they were never really looking. They were measuring me against a story that was never written for us. So I stopped waiting for a seat. I built my own table, and I pulled up extra chairs. She leaned in slightly. If you've ever been told to quiet your shine or soften your truth, I want you to hear me now. You were not made to disappear. You were not made to blend in. You were made to be seen. Fully, brightly, boldly. And the world needs what only you can give. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, brushing the curtains. The city hummed below like a sleeping giant. Zamani continued. To every girl who thinks she has to change to be enough. To every boy who has been told his blackness must be hidden to be safe. To every person who has ever looked in the mirror and wished they looked different just to be accepted. I see you. I believe you. And I need you to keep walking with your head high. She sat up straight. This is not about modeling anymore. It never really was. This is about visibility. This is about history. This is about giving truth a microphone and letting it echo in every space that once shut us out. She smiled then, not a small smile, full one. We are not the trend. We are the foundation. And we will no longer be hidden. The candle beside her burned steadily as she spoke her final words. If you felt something while watching this, I want you to do 3 things. First, share it with someone who needs it. Someone who may be close to giving up. Second, tell your own story. Loud or quiet, big or small. Speak it. It matters. And third, she looked into the camera again, warmth in her voice. Like and subscribe. not just to this channel. Subscribe to truth. Subscribe to courage. Subscribe to the belief that you are worthy just as you are. And come back. This is just the beginning. The screen slowly faded to black. But the story did not end. In cities across the world, classrooms played her video for their students. Young creators stitched her words into their art. People started using her sentence in protest signs. A movement began not because she asked for it, but because people needed it. And Zamani Rayne, once told she was too much for the world to handle, kept building space for others. She did not stop after the cameras turned away. She kept showing up, kept speaking, kept choosing the light, because in the end, she understood something that many never would. You cannot dim a sun that was born to rise. Thank you for reading this story. If it moved you, inspired you, or helped you remember who you are, please like this and subscribe to the channel. Your voice matters. Let them see you. Let them hear you. And never forget, you are the light.